So we have some new bombshell reporting from an investigative journalistic outlet in Alabama that helps to explain something that was previously kind of inexplicable. Earlier this year, Alabama Republicans decided to defy a direct order from the Supreme Court to change their racially gerrymandered congressional maps, ones that were in direct violation of the Voting Rights Act. According to the Alabama Political Reporter, that's the outlet, as Republican lawmakers worked to redraw their congressional map, they got intelligence that Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who had originally voted against the use of those gerrymandered maps, they got intelligence that Justice Kavanaugh was open to rehearing the Republicans' case under a different legal theory. Lo and behold, just last week, Alabama Republicans petitioned the court for that rehearing. And now the Alabama Political Report is adding to its reporting with revelations that the decision to defy the court in the first place was driven by nationally connected political operatives at the center of the well-documented right-wing effort to overturn the remaining key protections established by the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Excuse me for losing my voice. The news outlet goes on to outline connections between Alabama Republicans, Justice Kavanaugh, and a web of dark money groups connected by conservative activist Leonard Leo. Joining me now is the invaluable Dahlia Lithwick, who I hope is going to talk more than I am, senior editor at Slate and host of the Amicus podcast, as well as the author of the book Lady Justice, which is out in paperback today. I'm just going to wave it around and stop talking. Dahlia, first, talk to me a little bit about what seems to be happening with conservative activists taking, like, winking, I don't know, is it wink, wink, nudge, nudge from the Supreme Court justice? He's suggesting, hey, guys, come back here with the same case under a different, in a different fashion, other ways, right, for lack of a better term.
Look, this is, under any other guise, this is nullification, right? This is what happened after Brown v. Board when southern states said, no, we're just not going to comply. Exactly. You would think any of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court would be horrified when a state simply says, yeah, no, you wrote in Allen versus Milligan, this case, the ink is not dry, said create another majority black district.
New map.
New maps. This is what it looks like. Go back and no. Says Alabama. They said no. And the reason is, whether it's, either of the theories are horrifying, right, Alex? One is they have inside intel because everybody in the Alabama legislature is in bed with Leonard Leo and he's in bed with Brett Kavanaugh and the big donors and the slush money. That's awful. The other possibility is they don't care. And that's almost worse, right? That they're just going to take this case back to the Supreme Court under a theory that Brett Kavanaugh threw into a concurring opinion, and they're like, we think we can flip him this time.
Well, and it seems like, for those of us who are expecting a bad for civil rights ruling on affirmative action and were given exactly that bad ruling, the Alabama ruling was kind of like, oh, surprise, look, the court isn't isn't denying our country's racist history in the way that we thought it would. It now seems like that affirmative action ruling may be of use to people who want to get rid effectively of the ruling that the Supreme Court made on Alabama. Can you explain that more articulately than I have?
No, you've exactly nailed it. Justice Kavanaugh's theory in both cases is that there's remediation of centuries of civil rights abuses is like milk, and it has a sell-by date. And, in the affirmative action cases, he won on that theory, right? That's what the court said. It's like, bing, your Pop-Tart is done, and we can't use affirmative action anymore. It almost makes more sense for him to try to square the circle and say the same thing, right? That's the theory, neither briefed nor argued in the Alabama gerrymandering case. That's the theory. He pops into a concurrence is like, oh, I think Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act also has a bing sell-by date. And so come back to me and let's see when it happens. I'll just keep sniffing the milk.
Come back to me 2 minutes later. Lynn just issued this opinion. Is it? They're taking. They're petitioning to get this case back on the docket. Is it going to happen?
No, it's been hustled back to the court on an emergency basis. We may find out about it sooner rather than not. But the thing, Mark Joseph Stern and I wrote a piece today at Slate saying, Justice Clarence Thomas used to do this trick, right? He'd drop a footnote or he'd write in a dissent like, it's 1997. I sure hope someone, brings a case making the claim that the Second Amendment is an individual right. And then, like, years later, that case is brought and it comes before the court and the court changes the law. Now, that time frame is so pancaked that you can have Justice Kavanaugh write, I'm going to just kind of wink at you and say, bring it back under this theory. And in 3 months, I might change my mind. So what's astounding isn't just the defiance and the certainty shown by the Alabama legislature. It's that we are now in a climate where this conservative supermajority, 6 justices on the court, can literally signal to the country, to judges around the country and legislatures around the country, we're in the bag for you. Just bring us a better case.
Unbelievable. The impunity, the transparency of I'm going to say corruption, because the other thing that the Alabama Reporter does, the Alabama Political Reporter, the outlet that we cited in the beginning to this block, is they establish a web of connections between the justices, and we've long known that Leonard Leo is kind of the Svengali of this Roberts Court. But conservative donors, people who are on the payroll, Ginny Thomas. I mean, it is too elaborate for me to go into in the remaining minutes of television that we have. But the sort of the relationship between conservative dark money and the justices on the Supreme Court is not hard to trace. And in this particular case, it seems like that is very much at the root of how these justices send out their smoke signals and how the lawmakers and the lawyers on the other end understand them and read the smoke signals to begin with.
That's why I'm so glad you said that, because that's why this particular incident is so telling. We tend to completely bifurcate the Supreme Court coverage, right? We cover the cases, we cover the docket. We're like, I wonder, whether the Chevron doctrine is going to be overruled this turn. And then we cover the corruption and the scandals and the pay to play. And this illuminates that they're the same story, Alex. It's the same story, that the pay to play guys who are all involved with Leonard Leo, who's involved in efforts to suppress the vote, they're now paying to play the game of managing the docket itself, of doctrine itself. It's one story, and we have to start treating it like it's one story.
It is devastating and deeply distressing.